Joyce Hornady was an avid hand loader, and his initial marketing was to reloaders, which in those days was a very, very popular pastime.
Well, Dad had always felt that there were people who wanted to, quote unquote, shoot our bullets, but they didn't want to become hand loaders. And there's a logic to that. Obviously, in our industry, you know as well as I do that when it comes to ammunition, the bullet makes the difference. My 30-06, Winchester's 30-06, they all got a fit fire function through a 30-06. But it's the bullet that goes out the muzzle and that makes the difference on how it performs, whether you're going to be accurate, whether you're going to have an effect on game, what is it that you're trying to do. So we were always a bullet company, and we still are a bullet company. We market our ammunition as selling a Hornady bullet.
Now, initially, they used surplus military brass, and they'd modify it to different calibers, of course, and neck it down and neck it up and modify as necessary. But for years and years, they used purely military surplus brass, of course, loaded with Hornady bullets.
And the Vietnam War got hotter and hotter, and scrap brass got tougher and tougher to get. And at some point in time, we started reaching out. And we'd already had a relationship with the Horn family that owned Federal and talked to them about making cartridge cases for us. And so they started making some new cases for us.
It was a natural extension to move from bullets to loaded ammunition. And that happened in 1964 with Frontier ammunition.
Our pressure testing methods of the day were not particularly precise. They had a lot to do with what a hand loader thought would be a decent load, and it was. And you brought out a 30-06 with a 150 grain spire and a 180 grain spire and a 270 with a 130 grain spire. That was it. And a 308 with a 150 grain bullet and a 243 with a 100 grain bullet. That was it.
At least initially, the primary offerings in Frontier ammunition were cartridges that you could easily make from 30-06 brass, because that's what the military had in those days. There were shortages at the beginning of the Vietnam War, and at that time, then, in order to continue to manufacture ammunition, they had to outsource brass. The brass was made to Joyce Hornady's specifications, but they really had no control, so they had continuing issues of quality control with the brass. It was still good ammunition, but it was a problem, and it probably wasn't as profitable as it could have been because they had to buy now three major components. They had to source primers, they had to source propellant, and they had to source the brass.
That went along fairly well until the early 90s. The Clinton years, there was some major pressure by some, I think it was Moynihan, pushed a 10,000% tax on ammunition as a way to diminish the firearms and ammunition business in the United States. Obviously, that wasn't going to work, but that fired up the customers out there that said there could be problems acquiring product, and we couldn't even come close to supplying it. And our vendors at that point in time, all three of them were selling us cartridge cases as well as primers, but they're struggling too. They can't deliver everything. And so it's really hard for management at one of those companies to tell a sales guy who says, I need more 30-06, like, well, we'd love to do that, but we just shipped 1 million rounds off to Hornady, and he's going to go, what in the hell are you thinking? That really forced us to start the second leg of the stool, which is we had bullets. We need to be able to make our own cartridge cases. We can't be dependent on a competitor for supply to compete with them in the marketplace, and that really pushed us in that direction.
That was a tough decision because Hornady Manufacturing was still not a large company, and that was a tremendous capital investment to tool up to make their own brass. The family really thinks that was the turning point for Hornady Manufacturing, and that's really what gave them the ability to become the major concern that Hornady Manufacturing really is today.